Chapter 4. The monetary system, what it is and how it works. The chapter begins our analysis of monetary policy. We address three related questions. First, what is money? Second, what is the role of a nation's banking system in determining the amount of money in the economy? Third, how does a nation's central bank influence the banking system and the money supply? This chapter's introduction to the monetary system provides the foundation of understanding monetary policy. First, we begin by addressing the question, what is money? When we say that a person has a lot of money, we usually mean that he or she is wealthy. By contrast, economists use the term money in a more specialized way. To an economist, money does not refer to all wealth, but only to one type of it. Money is the stock of assets that can be readily used to make transactions. Roughly speaking, the dollars, or in other countries, for example, pounds or yen, in the hands of the public make up the nation's stock of money. So, it is the asset liquidity, ease at which an asset can be converted into a medium of exchange and used to buy things. Also, money is the economy's most liquid asset. Part B. The functions of money. Money has three purposes. It is a store of value, a unit of account, and a medium of exchange. As a store of value, money is a way to transfer purchasing power from the present to the future. If I work today and earn $100, I can hold the money and spend it tomorrow, next week, or next month. As a unit of account, money provides the terms in which prices are quoted and debts are recorded. A car dealer tells you that a car costs $20,000, not 400 shirts, even though it may amount to the same thing. Finally, as a medium of exchange, money is what we use to buy goods and services. When we walk into stores, we are confident that the shopkeepers will accept our money in exchange for the items they are selling. How the quantity of money is measured. Two common measures of the quantity of money in an economy are M1 and M2. We measure money with several definitions. M1 includes currency and money in checking accounts. The demand deposits. Traveler's checks are also a component of M1, but are declining in use. M2 includes all of M1 plus savings deposits, time deposits like certificate of deposit, and money market funds. D. How the quantity of money is controlled. You know now that the quantity of money available in an economy is called the money supply. Usually, the government's control over the money supply is called the monetary policy. And the monetary policy, generally, is conducted by the central bank. For example, Banque du Liban in Lebanon and the Federal Reserves in USA. To control the supply of money, governments usually use three tools. A primary way in which the central bank controls the supply of money is through open market operations, which is the purchase and sale of government bonds, or by changing the reserve requirements, and finally by changing the discount rate. Part 2. A. The role of banks in the monetary system. The money supply is determined not only by the Fed policy, but also by the behavior of the households which hold money and banks in which money is held. We begin by recalling that the money supply includes both currency in the hands of the public and deposits, such as checking account balances at banks that households can use on demand for transactions. Therefore, if M stands for money supply, then C stands for the currency, and D denotes the demand deposits. Part 2b, the 100% reserve banking. Imagine a world without banks. In such a world, all money takes the form of currency, and the quantity of money is simply the amount of currency that the public holds. Now, introduce banks. At first, suppose that banks accept deposits but do not make loans. The only purpose of the banks is to provide a safe place for depositors to keep their money. Deposits that banks have received but have not lent out are called reserves. Some reserves are held in the vaults of local banks throughout the country, but most are held at a central bank, such as the Federal Reserve. The system in which deposits are held in reserve and banks are not making loans is called the 100% reserve banking. For more clarification, we can see examples for both cases in the next 2 slides. Let's have an example. Without banks, all money takes the form of currency, and the quantity of money is simply the amount of currency. Suppose there is a $1,000 of currency in the economy, thus money supply will equal to the currency in the economy. M equals C equal to the $1,000. Example with banks. Suppose now you deposit $1,000 in First Bank. First Bank accepts the deposit but does not make loans. The only purpose of the bank is to provide a safe place for depositors to keep their money. Therefore, banks place the money in reserves until depositors make a withdrawal or write a check against the balance. The balance sheet of First Bank looks like the below. The bank's assets are the $1,000 it holds as reserves. The bank's liabilities are the $1,000 it owes to depositors. Unlike banks in our economy, the bank is not making loans, so it will not earn profits from its assets. Fractional reserve banking. Now imagine that banks start to use some of their deposits to make loans. For example, to families who are buying houses or to firms that are investing in new plants and equipment. The advantage to banks is that they cannot charge interest on the loans. The banks must keep some reserves on hand so that reserves are available whenever depositors want to make withdrawals. But as long as the amount of new deposits approximately equals the amount of withdrawals, a bank need not keep all its deposits in reserve. Thus, bankers have an incentive to make loans. When they do so, we have fractional reserve banking, a system under which banks keep only a fraction of their deposits in reserve. Also, in a system of fractional reserve banking, banks usually create money. A closer look at money creation. Assume each bank maintains a reserve deposit ratio of 20% and that the initial deposit is $1,000. The balance sheet assumes that the reserve deposit ratio, which is the fraction of deposits kept in reserve, is 20%. First Bank keeps $200 of the $1,000 in deposits in reserve and lends out the remaining $800. Notice that First Bank increases the supply of money by $800 when it makes this loan. Before the loan is made, the money supply is $1,000, equaling the deposit in First Bank. After the loan is made, the money supply is $1,800, The depositor still has a demand deposit of $1,000, but now the borrower holds $800 in currency. Thus, in a system of fractional reserve banking, banks create money. The creation of money does not stop with First Bank. If the borrower deposits the $800 in another bank, or if the borrower uses the $800 to pay someone who then deposits it, the process of money creation continues. Here is the balance sheet of Second Bank. Second Bank receives the $800 in deposits, keeps 20% or $160 in reserve, and then loans out $640. Thus, Second Bank creates $640 of money. If this $640 is eventually deposited in Third Bank, this bank keeps 20% or $128 in reserve and then loans out $512, resulting in this balance sheet. The process goes on and on. With each deposit and subsequent loan, more money is created. This process of money creation can continue forever, but it does not create an infinite amount of money. Letting RR denote the reserve deposit ratio, the amount of money that the original $1,000 creates is represented by the total money supply, which is equal to the money multiplier times the initial deposit. Each $1 of reserves generates 1 over RR dollar of money. In our example, RR is equal to 0.2, so the original $1,000 generates $5,000 of money. Part 3. How central banks influence the money supply. The supply of money depends on monetary base, that is denoted by B, the reserve deposit ratio, which is denoted by RR, and the currency deposit ratio, which is represented by CR. Let's have a look at some definitions. Monetary base B, it is the total number of dollars held by the public as currency C, and by the banks as reserves R. It is directly controlled by the central bank. The balance sheet of the central bank looks like the below. Under the assets, we have the securities and the loans. And under the liabilities, we have the currency plus the reserve is equal to the monetary base. So the monetary base is equal in general the currency plus the bank reserves, that is denoted by B equals C plus R. The reserve deposit ratio, it is the fraction of deposits that banks hold in reserve. RR is equal to the reserve over deposit times 100, which is represented by R over D times 100. The currency deposit ratio, CR, it is the amount of currency people hold as a fraction of their holding of deposits. CR is equal to the currency over deposit times 100, which is denoted by the ratio of C over D times 100. We begin modeling the money supply. Our model shows how the money supply depends on the monetary base, the reserve deposit ratio, and the currency deposit ratio. It allows us to examine how Fed policy and the choices of banks and households influence the money supply. We begin with the definition of the money supply and the monetary base. The first equation states that the money supply is the sum of currency and the demand deposits. The second equation states that the monetary base is the sum of currency and the bank reserves. To solve for the money supply as a function of the three variables, the monetary base, the reserve deposit ratio, and the currency deposit ratio, we divide the first equation by the second to obtain M over B is equal C plus D over C plus R. We then divide both the top and the bottom of the expression on the right by d. C over d plus 1 over C over d plus R over d. Notice that C over D, it is the currency deposit ratio, CR, and R over D, it is the reserve deposit ratio, RR. Making these substitutions and bringing B from the left to the right side of the equation, we obtain M is equal to CR plus 1 over CR plus RR times B. We can now see how the money supply is proportional to the monetary base. The factor of proportionality, which is CR plus 1 over CR plus RR, is denoted by small m and is called the money multiplier. The money supply is a multiplication of the money multiplier times the monetary base. Each dollar of the monetary base produces m dollars of money because the monetary base has a multiplied effect on the money supply, and the monetary base is sometimes called high-powered money. The central bank influences the money supply either by changing the monetary base or by changing the reserve ratio and thereby the money multiplier. Fed can change the monetary base through open market operations, OMO, or making loans to banks. An increase in the monetary base leads to a proportionate increase in the money supply. When the central bank buys bonds from the public, the dollars it pays for the bonds increase the monetary base and therefore increase the money supply. When the central bank sells bonds to the public, the dollars it receives will reduce the monetary base and thus decrease the money supply. The instruments of monetary policy. The central bank, or the Fed, can influence the reserve ratio by altering reserve requirements or by changing the interest rate it pays banks for reserves they hold. A decrease in the reserve deposit ratio or in the currency deposit ratio increases the money multiplier and thus the money supply and vice versa.